We don't know the hour or the day. Time is such a gift, try and control your destiny. We don't know the hour or the day. Unity is strength, let's stand as one without delay. Cause no bad vibe me a chant. Me no want no bad vibe me a chant. I just peace the times all around, yeah. No bad vibe me a chant. No bad vibe me a chant. Say me no want no bad vibe me a chant. I just peace good time all around, yeah. No bad vibe me a chant.
Hello, friends and family. How you guys doing today? Welcome to another episode of Death Taught Us How to Live. I'm your host, the AVM Superhero, and I am so happy that you guys are with me today. I have a very special guest today, and I was very intrigued when I heard her story, and it hit home to me because it was very similar to mine. And I was kind of scared when I had my stroke to talk about my story. You know, outside of the stroke itself, it was something else that I was going through as well. And I have a person here that wants to talk about that particular instance in her life and how she managed to, like Trezana Staple will say, rise from the ashes like a phoenix rising. So without any further ado, I would like to bring onto the stage my friend. Her name is Aishaah Reed. So please welcome to the show, Aishaah Reed. Aishaah, how you doing, sister?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm well. Thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely.
I know this is a very tough thing to talk about, especially as a stroke survivor, but
Mm-hmm.
talking about your story was a very touching thing for me. So I would like you to take a moment to tell us what happened to you and why we on Death Taught Us How to Live today. So without any further ado, please.
Oh, sure thing. So where do I start? Um, so in April of 2021, I had a stroke. What ended up happening was I was actually on my honeymoon in Tulum, Mexico, and um, I had previously injured my neck at some point prior to the vacation. And I didn't know kind of what was going on, but I injured my neck. I kind of like ruptured the artery in my neck. And I was kind of sitting on this ticking time bomb, and it decided that it wanted to go off when I was on vacation in Mexico. And I ended up having a stroke over there. I didn't know what it was. My husband at the time didn't know what it was. We were all just kind of like scrambling, trying to figure it out, and kind of calling back home and making arrangements to come back to the making arrangements to come back to the States as quickly as we can. So that was all scary. I mean, I guess like I'll give like an overview. So like that all happened, and we make it back to the States, and go through the recovery process. I'm in the hospital. I'm in the rehab hospital, and I think what we'll kind of like discuss more and talk about more is kind of like my recovery at home, and kind of again, I said I was on my honeymoon, and kind of the stress that that placed on my marriage, and kind of the hardships that being a newlywed couple you go through when something like that happens, and you have to rely on this person who was just became your spouse, and now they're your caretaker, and how difficult that can be to navigate. But that's kind of like everything in short summary. I can go
There
into
you go.
detail on anything.
I appreciate you being so vulnerable and telling us about this particular story. But before we get into the recovery part, I'm
Mm-hmm.
very curious about the Mexico part.
Cool,
Uh,
child.
no, seriously, because this is something that can happen to anybody, and obviously it happened to you. Is that I want to know about you having a stroke, and then you have to go to a hospital system that you know nothing about, maybe even don't even know how to speak the language, and maybe you don't have insurance that's actually going to be international insurance and things of all that nature. How was that, and can you describe to us what you think we should do as Americans when we go travel just to be precautious?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I can talk a little bit about my experience. It was terrible. I mean, one, like, I just had a stroke, so I was kind of like in and out of really, I think, understanding what was going on. But Tulum is about 60 to 90 minutes south of Cancun. It's kind of like a smaller city. There's not really a lot of resources. It's a big tourist town, a lot of restaurants, a lot of bars, not really a lot of everything else, not really a lot of hospitals or doctors or things like that. So I had the stroke. It was a Sunday night, and I actually remember the moment that I had it. Felt like electricity like went up my arm. But I didn't really think anything about it. I woke up in the morning and I was unable to walk. I was unable to swallow and I was vomiting a lot. And because I was unable to swallow, I was like aspirating and choking, and it just was not a good time. And we were really concerned, and I was like, this isn't normal. So we kind of went down to the concierge, the front desk, and we were like, hey, like, well, my husband went down to the concierge and was like, hey, like, I think we need to go to a hospital somewhere. And mind you, I can't walk. And there's no like ADA, right? Like there's no like Disabilities Act when you're overseas, depending on what country you're in. So like there were no like wheelchair available. There were no like, mandatory like ramps or anything like that. Literally like I had to be like carried out of the hotel and carried into the taxi into the hospital. We get to the hospital and, you could tell it's just, it's kind of like, it's a little bit less than like an urgent care clinic, like kind of in and out, like they're not used to seeing big things. We get there and they give me some like IV fluids. And essentially they're just like, oh, she's just really, it's still in Mexico. She's just really drunk. She's inebriated. She just needs to, take these pills and she'll be better in a day. She just needs to rest. And I just remember thinking like, I can't take pills because I can't swallow. Like, does nobody think that that's really weird? And so we travel back to the hotel and we're talking to my parents, and my parents are like, no, like, you need to get back to the States now. We need you back there. And, my husband goes off and he gets like this medicine that they told me to get. And I was just like, yeah, I don't really think I can't swallow. Like, so I'm not gonna be able to take the medicine. And one, the medicine was very expensive. The hospital visit was very expensive. The setup is a little bit different. Essentially, they kind of see you. They kind of say like, okay, we need like X amount of dollars up front, and then we'll do whatever service it is. Or we think you need this. It's going to cost this much money. Can you pay us? So it actually ends up being where you're in the hospital. It's like multiple times where like they're asking you for money, and I mean thousands of dollars. Like we need $1,000 for this. We need $1,000 for that. And I I think by the time we left Mexico, I had spent maybe, I don't know, maybe like 15 to $20,000 in like medical cost. Um, because we ended up driving to Cancun, which is a much bigger city, a little bit more metropolitan. And we went to a hospital in Cancun, and the hospital system in Mexico is a little different because they have like, like public and private hospitals, and the private hospitals are really, really expensive, but you kind of don't want to go to a public hospital, especially kind of as a foreigner. And I don't speak Spanish. So we went to, this private hospital. I was able to get, again, some very expensive testing there. And even they didn't say like, you had a stroke. They were just like, hey, like we kind of see, something going on with your brain, we see something on your brain. And by that time we had, tickets to get back to the States. So we got on a plane and kind of haultailed back to the States. But yeah, I mean, it's super expensive. It's scary because like you don't know what's going on, and like clearly the places where I had gone, they didn't know what was going on. I think that having kind of internet, if you are going international, having that international insurance, kind of knowing the medical system, what services would be available to you if something were to happen. Where would you be able to go? Would it be, what are the different kind of standards of care where you're going to be? I think those are important to know, because that's absolutely not something that I was thinking about when I was going to Mexico. Didn't care in the world, what the hospitals were like, because I wasn't going there for the hospitals.
Yeah, I think that's the the scary part about going on vacation, that people don't realize that in a blink of an eye, something like this can happen. And when it
Hmm.
does happen, most of these countries outside of the United States, if you go to a public hospital, and if it's like almost a third world country, you're going to be in for a rude awakening.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you said about this international insurance thing, people don't understand that there is an international insurance that you could actually purchase, that so you could go to the private hospital, because when you go to those
Hmm.
private hospitals, they do ask for money up front. And if you don't have the
Hmm.
money up front, no
Hmm.
service. So I'm very curious. Did you know what a stroke was at that particular time, or you just thought something was just wrong with you?
Yeah, so my dad's a doctor, and so like I grew up kind of like in like the medical kind of. I used to work at his doctor's office, so like I grew up like knowing kind of like basic medical stuff. But at the time, like, did I think that I had had a stroke? Absolutely not. Like, I still didn't know. Like, I think it might have been days later. It wasn't until like I was in America. I was like, oh, I probably had a stroke. I think what caught me off guard the most is that one, I felt too young for that to even be kind of like in the realm of possibility. I didn't have any, of the traditional risk factors. Like I didn't have high blood pressure. I was in really, really good shape. At the time I was vegan. So like I was in good like heart health. I I was a healthy person. So I definitely wasn't, I'm 31, healthy, was not thinking stroke. Didn't even know that like a neck injury could cause a stroke. That I did not know. And I also was caught off guard because, like I said, I remained like conscious and cognitive the entire time. And I wasn't aware that like you could have a stroke and kind of just be like somewhat cognitively like, and it depends on like what part of the brain the stroke is in, but like I was cognitively like almost okay. I was very tired, I was exhausted, but yeah, like I knew what was going on, I knew where I was, I knew who I was. Like I was like, oh, like this isn't a stroke, because if this was a stroke I would be experiencing like other like cognitive issues, and I was.
I'm glad you brought that up, Asia, because a lot of people misconstrue what a stroke is and how the symptoms actually affect the body.
Mhm.
Um, it's very subtle. It's extremely subtle, and it's just a slight change of what happened to you. Like you think, yeah, everything is fine, but your body's not reacting the same way. And a lot of people ignore the signs or don't know the signs at all. Have you ever heard of the acronym Be Fast?
Yeah, well, yeah, after my stroke, of course.
Me too. Me too. Me too. Me too. Would you like to tell people what BFAST is so they can understand it? So if this happens to them, they understand what to do.
Sure thing. So you have to help me out. It's the signs
Okay.
of the stroke. I know the F is like for face,
Let's
right?
start, let's start with the B first. B is
Ah,
balance. B
balance,
is balance. So if your balance is off, E is your eyes. If your eyes
eyes,
start going drooping and all that. F is faces. If your faces start drooping.
face. Hmm.
A is your arm is weak. S, speech starts to slur. And
And
T, time to call 911.
I didn't have
But
911 to call, so.
yeah, right. Different countries. So who do you call? And especially if you don't know the language, what do you do? That is, I can't even understand that. I
Yeah,
can't
who
fathom
figured
what's
it out?
actually going through y'all mind on your honeymoon. Like you guys got to start your life, and all this is happening to you, and your husband looking at you, you're looking at him like, I don't know, like drink this. I can't drink it. It won't go down. And you're
That's
throwing up
right.
every time you put something in your mouth. I was aspirating too. I had the same thing happen to
Yeah,
me.
that was
Um,
scary. That was
yeah,
super
it's
scary.
very
I thought I was gonna
scary.
die.
The wild thing to me is that I had people come to my hotel room and they was talking about, oh man, we went to this great restaurant and we ate all this steak, and I'm drooling at the mouth. I'm like, I wish I could eat steak. I want to eat steak too, but I couldn't eat anything. For anything I ate, I could have choked and died.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I get that, but now you're back in the States, and
Hmm.
this is the wildest thing because we get married, and the first thing you say in your vows are for sickness and in health, for richer and poor. But that's the
Hmm.
only time we talk about health when it comes to marriage. When I was married and then I had my stroke, my relationship went to kaput. So what happened with yours? Are you still married, or did it translate to something different?
No, we are not married anymore. We only lasted maybe a year and 2 months, 3 months after I had the stroke. It was hard because I think that you're right. Like I remember kind of once I was stable in the hospital in the States, and it was like clear that, okay, you had a stroke, this is what happened to you. You start to think, okay, like, well, what is going to be like, what is my prognosis going to be? What is my future going to look like? And immediately, like, my thoughts went to, oh my God, like, I just married this man. And now, the very nature of our relationship is going to change. And he's going to have to take care of me. And he's going to have to do this. And he's going to have to do that. And like, that was on my brain the entire time. And um, he was very supportive of me in the hospital. I mean, he was coming to see me all of the time. So he was really great. Like it felt for me, it was great kind of having that support in the hospital, just like knowing that like he was going to be there and he was coming to see me. And like I said, he came almost every day. That was great. It's a little bit different, right? When you transition when you transition home and you're making your recovery at home. It's a lot different.
Trust me, I get it. I completely get it. And like I said when I started the show, this is the underbelly that a lot of people don't talk about. Yes, you go through a stroke and you have to go through a stroke
Mhm,
recovery, but being married as well, you put that on top of it, it's a whole different ball game that people don't
mhm,
understand that stroke survivors and their loved one or caregiver has to go through. So
mhm,
I'm going to ask you this. I know for me, when I had my stroke, I looked at life, everything different. Everything was changed for me. Um, like you said, you thought about, hey, this person has to take care of me now. This is not what we signed up for, things of that nature. I don't know how he's going to handle it though. So did you feel guilty and did you feel like you needed to release this person or did you just like, hopefully we can make this work?
yeah, I definitely had those thoughts. I mean, I felt incredibly, I mean, knowing that it wasn't, my fault or anybody's fault, I felt incredibly guilty. I felt like, oh my God, like this is not what he signed up for at all. Like he shouldn't have to do with that, to deal with this. And it was a lot of guilt. And it was like well, if I am, really bad, and, at that time, I didn't know how my body was going to progress. I didn't know kind of what the future looked like for me. I was in a hospital bed, I couldn't walk. But at that time, like, I absolutely had those thoughts of, if we kind of have to divorce so that he can go live his life, then like I'm comfortable with that. That's something that I'm willing to do. Um, yeah, I mean, you get those feelings, and you're like, I don't want to put this person through
I thought I was alone with that thought. I
this.
thought I was no, seriously. I thought I was the only one that thought that way, but it seemed like other survivors think that way too. It's like, no, that person didn't sign up for this, and I don't want to drag you through this. If you really want to be here, you want to be here. But
Hmm.
I'm going to
Hmm.
give you space. If you want to move, move on, and I'm fine with that.
Hmm.
How does that actually resonate with you? Like knowing that you marry somebody that you thought you're going to be with for the rest of your life, and then all of a sudden your mind shifts and you're thinking about their well-being more than yours. How does that deal with, how do you deal with that with your psyche? How do you understand that and move forward with your life from that particular situation?
Um, that's a good question. I mean, I think that, right, like over time, you get different perspectives. I think looking back on it now, almost 4 years later, looking back on it now, it's just like, oh, you know, I think that that was a valid thing to feel at the time. I should have been comfortable to feel other things than that, I think. But it's difficult, I think, kind of navigating, okay, like this is supposed to be like my person. This is supposed to be like, the person that I'm with. And now we had this life altering event. Again, nobody's fault. And I'm feeling guilt and I'm not really sure how they're feeling. I hear like, we're going to work through this. It's going to be fine. But again, like not knowing what the prognosis is going to be, not knowing how I'm going to recover. Are you really going to you know, be there the entire, like, the entirety of the time. Like, recovery is it's a long road for stroke survivors. I mean, it's lifelong. It's not just, you're home from the hospital and you take a couple days off and you're back at it.
I have to ask you this question because this went through my mind after I had my stroke. Like, I didn't I didn't see like, well, you said you didn't really think that you was going to die. You thought everything was just different. Like, I thought I was going to die, and I was comfortable with it. I was very comfortable with it, and it was no anger, it was no animosity, no jealousy, no evil spirits going around in my head like that. Why is this happening to me? Um, did you have that same type of revelation sometime during your recovery?
Uh, yeah, I mean, I didn't think that. At no point did I think that I was going to die. Were there points in my recovery that were so tough that I felt like I wish I had have died? Absolutely. I had those thoughts. I was like, I can't, struggling through this is hard. And like when me and my husband, had our subsequent issues, one of the things that, like, I would say to him was like, bro, like, I should have just died in that hotel room in Mexico. That would have been a lot better than this. So yeah, I mean, I think I had those thoughts kind of thinking like that, but I did not think at any point like, oh, like this is going to be the end for me.
Okay, so you brought up something pretty interesting because, and I don't really want to touch on what happened between you guys, but I
Hmm.
just want to deal with more of your point of view and your
Hmm.
perspective on this.
Hmm.
Um, did you have difficulties explaining yourself to your spouse and to your friends and to family, and they didn't understand what you was going through, and they might have put more pressure on you to be the person you was before when they didn't really understand that you are a different person now?
Yeah, I think 100%. And I think that that's with kind of everybody that across the board. It's this, okay, we're going to get you back to what you were. You're young, you're going to recover just fine. Everything's going to be back. And it's a lot of pressure. And I know I felt a ton of pressure from my spouse to just, you're not taking your recovery serious. You need to take your recovery serious. You need to do this. You need to do that. And no, like it's just like, no, like nobody understands just one, how physically exhausted I am. Nobody understands mentally what it's like to be perfectly able, functioning person and have all of that taken away from you, literally, like that. Um, unless you've gone through something like that, you can't imagine like how that completely just contorts your brain and how you have to mentally work through that.
Yeah, I had that same issue. Like I couldn't explain myself. I thought I was explaining myself, but I wasn't explaining myself properly. And it got frustrating to me because at one hand, I look like I can handle it.
Hmm.
And I could speak, I could talk,
Hmm.
like I can handle
Hmm.
conversations, but I really do get rattled. And when arguments come about, I can't handle that. I can't switch from one topic to the next. Do you have that same type of issue?
So yes, when I kind of like in the early stages of my recovery, I absolutely experienced that. I had very low kind of tolerance, physical tolerance for like any sort of like confrontation or any sort of like disagreement. I would get rattled and the words just wouldn't come out of my mouth. I'm a little bit better now, but yeah, I had a lot of, I think, just issues with, you know, expressing my emotions to other people because my emotions had, even like how my emotions manifested were changed by the stroke. So explaining that to people was hard. Explaining how I felt, getting people to understand how I felt was super difficult. And I mean, I just felt like you feel very alone. It's a very lonely feeling.
I saw this commercial about a guy having a heart attack, and he was with like all his family, but nobody was able to help him because he was going through a heart attack. There's nothing they can do. So it's the same thing. Like, I compare it to us. Like, we have this brain issue that
Mm-hmm.
nobody can actually see,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't understand what we're going through. They was like, okay, just get stronger and go back to work. I'm like, okay, I would love to do that, but I don't know how to do that anymore. It's like you're looking at yourself. I don't know if you have any deficits. Do you have any deficits?
Not currently. I mean, I have little things here and there, but I am
Okay, so it's
I'm
like if you
pretty
can't
good.
move your arm or if you have pins and needle sensation,
Mm-hmm.
people can't see that, and they automatically assume that you're perfectly fine. Like, oh, you
Mm-hmm.
just had a stroke, get over it. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that's not something you get over. This is for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and you're right, because like again, like I said, like a lot of my effects weren't cognitive. So like I said, I retained my memory, I kind of retained my sense of self, and I was able to conversate with people, I was able to talk to people, which I think um didn't let people didn't give people like the indication of like just how hard everything was. Yeah, and I mean, like you're absolutely right. Like they're invisible things. Like I said, I think to most people don't even know that I had a stroke. If I tell them, they're just like amazed that I had a stroke. It's like, yeah, I had one. Um, like I think to most of my friends and family, I probably seem, almost 100% back. But yeah, like there are things like I like the pins and needles. I have nerve pain. I have nerve pain every day. I've had nerve pain every day for the last 4 years. I will probably have nerve pain every day for for the rest of my life. And that is something that, you know, chronic pain like that takes a toll on you. And some days it's unbearable, and some days you don't notice it. Um, I mean, it's little things here and there that like I am consciously aware of. That's like, oh yeah, the stroke. My eye, my left eye will still like
Right,
water or get really dry, and it'll still kind of like act up here and there. And I'll just
right.
be like, oh, that's my stroke eye. And people just like, oh, what are you talking? I'm like, oh, it's my like stroke eye is acting up. I don't know what to tell you. So it's like little stuff here and there that like I'm constantly reminded, oh yeah, you had that stroke.
I'm gonna get back to that mentality part of going through a stroke and going through the recovery of a stroke and being married. But I had something that just came to my mind. I want to know what your thoughts on that is. I think it's for me. It's like a catch-22. You have a stroke and you try your best to look normal, and everybody looks at you as normal, but deep down you're struggling. And you don't want to seem like you're weak or anything like that.
Hmm.
And it's very difficult because, like you said, you're basically by yourself. So if you do have something like that and you're going through that, how do you or how did you overcome that? So the audience can actually understand so they can.
Yeah, I think that that's a hard question. That that's a good question. I think that for me, it was because you do want to look normal, you do want to act normal, and you want to be normal, right? Like I mean, I remember saying like I just want to be normal again, like I just want to go back again, and there is that, but there's also I think I had a conscious kind of like understanding that like normal was gone. I really kind of leaned into kind of like the knowledge base of like a lot of like disability groups and like disability like with disability activists kind of have to say about being disabled and navigating life as a disabled person. I found that that was incredibly helpful for shifting kind of my mindset about what my expectations of myself should be and what other people's expectations of me may be, and how.
Unfortunately, Asia just disappeared on us real quick. I don't know what happened, guys. She'll be right back, and hopefully, oh, she's back.
Am I good? Am I
You're
back?
back, you're back,
Okay.
Asia. Go ahead, keep on going,
Okay.
keep on going, keep on going.
Yeah, no, I just think that like I heavily leaned into like what a lot of folks in like the disability advocacy space had to say about being disabled, and about how society treats you as a disabled person. And for me, that was comforting because that gave me the space to say, okay, like this is my life, this is my body, and I am going to do things that is in my best interest, that I feel good about, that I feel comfortable and safe with.
So let's get back to the marriage part. And you saying that you was feeling guilty because I was feeling guilty too. I was like, for my marriage, I was married for about 20 something years, and when this happened, we was already having our difficulties, and
Hmm.
my thought process was like, man, we had a very difficult time before. It's going to be very difficult for us now, and I don't want her to be attached to me if she really doesn't want to be with me. I don't want her to be with me because of sympathy. I felt
Hmm.
inadequate. I felt like I was
Hmm.
less of a man, and my life would be fine if I just let her find someone that she can love and
Hmm.
grow and blossom.
I understand.
So, are you saying the same thing to me that happened to you, and that's the type of mindset that you had?
Yeah, I think that that's right, but I think that the perspective may be a little bit different, right? Because we didn't have a lot of history together, because we were kind of newlywed, it was, we can't start off like this. I can't, a month ago, and it was almost a month to the day, like a month ago, like I promised this man all of this stuff, and like I am not going to be able to deliver. And so, we can go our separate. Want to be the thing holding me back. But again, like this is not for. That's absolutely how I felt. That's how I processed it. At least.
Yeah, I don't know why we think that way, but it's very hard. But that's the most important thing that I'm trying to bring out with this episode is that
Hmm.
when we have a stroke as a married couple, um,
Hmm.
all of our faculties, all of our thoughts, all of our logic goes out the window, and we are rebooted. Like you're
Correct.
pretty young, man. I'm in my almost 50, and when the computers first came out with Windows 95, you turn on the computer, and sometimes it would crash and it'll get the blue screen of death, and you have to restart the computer. That's what happened to us. We had to get restarted,
Hmm.
rebooted.
Hmm.
So
That's
the
right.
person that we were before, it's not the same anymore, and we're trying to keep up with you. So when we trying to keep up with you, you're thinking one way, we're thinking another way, and then we're like, you know what, I'm fine. If you want to go and live your life with somebody else, do whatever you want to do, I'm fine, because I'm more concerned about swallowing again. I'm more concerned
Hmm.
of walking again.
Yeah.
And I think that's the mentality that we have in our first couple of years. Did you have that same type of mentality, or am I just throwing things out there in the wind?
Yeah, no, I think that that's right because yeah, I mean, you're absolutely on par. It's just like, I'm thinking literally about like taking baby steps. Like my concerns now are very different than like our concerns were, prior to the stroke. We may have been worried about different things, but now like my focus is literally on like, okay, like I want to be able to walk, with this aid and not that aid. I, want to be able to comfortably and safely get in and out of the bathtub. Our focus changes and it becomes almost 100% on recovery and on getting better and on, kind of getting your body back together to the best extent that it can. And it's scary again for us because we don't know what the best is. We don't know how we're going to recover. We don't know what's going to come back on. We don't know what's not going to come back on. And that's a scary spot to be in. And that also is very hard to articulate to people because other
Right,
people, have in their minds what you should be. And it's like, it may not be that.
right. My perspective of life completely changed, and when it changed, the wants and the needs that I had before were irrelevant now. And now I'm looking at my spouse. I'm like, wow, I love you, but what you want, I don't want it anymore. And I don't want to be selfish, but this is the reality of it. I'm just grateful that I'm able to gain my ability to walk, gain my
Hmm.
ability to
Hmm.
swallow, gain my ability to be independent. But what you want and what I want, two different things. And it was hard for me to actually go through the process of going through a divorce. You know, what was it for you? Like, was it very difficult for you, or did you like, you know what, live your life? I'm good.
I think there were other factors I think that made my divorce difficult, incredibly difficult. Again, like there had been some time between, I had the stroke in April of 2021. We ultimately ended up splitting beginning of June 2022. And like I said, there were some different factors there that I think added in, and it definitely pushed the scale down a little bit to where when I got to the point where we need to divorce, it made a lot of sense. It was just something that like I have to do. Like this is the route that I have to go.
No, I get that. Now, can I ask you a question about that? You know, when you left the hospital or left rehab and you was back home and you had to just be you and your spouse, did they recommend to you any type of counseling or therapy? And if not, do you recommend that we should have that?
Oh, absolutely. So no, my my former spouse was not the biggest kind of therapy fan. I actually, so I had been working with a therapist prior to my stroke, and kind of almost immediately after coming home, I started seeing her again. And my ex-spouse was not a fan of my therapist, but I absolutely recommend it. It's paramount again in getting your kind of your emotions to a place where you can one and kind of accept what happened, because sometimes it's just hard to accept that like your life has just drastically changed for no control of your own. Like you were walking down the street one day and now you can't walk down the street anymore. That's a hard adjustment. So to kind of get you in a space where you can accept that and you can again start making those choices and those decisions that are best for you.
Yeah, and I get that, and I get that because a lot of men don't want to go to therapy. I get that part too, but I think what I'm trying to lean to is that this is a new, new world for both.
Hmm.
And like you said, you're young, and nobody expect a young person to have a stroke. So he didn't have a blueprint of what to do with you once you got home. Like,
Not at all.
not at all. And I get it, because that's the same thing that happened with my marriage. Like, and my kids, like nobody told us what to expect. They're
Hmm.
like, okay, he's home. Like, he might be a little bit off in his head,
Hmm.
and there's a reason why. Nobody explained that. So we were just
Hmm.
left to ourselves and we had to figure it out. So I'm more asking the question of not necessarily if he is, or anybody is willing to do it, but do you think that it should be like something that is highly recommended by the hospital, saying, hey, when you guys get home, this is going to be different. You need counseling and you need to have this, that, because you don't know what you're going to expect when you get back home. What do you
I
think on
think
that?
that's I think that's right. And I mean, like I remember like being in the rehab hospital, like you had to basically you had to do like exit interviews with like my physical therapist. Like they would bring, your caretaker, whoever is going to be taking care of you. And in my case, it was my spouse. So he came in and they'd be like, okay, like she needs, physical modifications here. She needs, help getting up this step. If she can go down the step, if she can't get up, things like that. And then we had the exit meeting with my like occupational therapist. And it's like, she's going to need help, reaching this cupboard. She's going to need help getting in the shower this way. I think you're absolutely right. Like there needs to also be like a mental health counselor. And it's like, okay, like these are things that you also need to think about. These are things that you need to anticipate within the household. And I mean, again, like that could be for whoever your caretaker may be, if it's a friend, if it's your, your parents, a sibling, anybody, like that relationship is going to change. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, as you're kind of doing like this exiting process and they're getting ready to kind of send you home, at least putting it on the radar that you are going to go through um, a lot of emotional challenges individually that is going to put
Yeah.
stress on the household.
Yes, and I think that put it on the radar. I like that term better. Put it on the radar. Not just say, "Hey, your husband can walk. Your husband or wife can talk again,"
Hmm.
but their mental state. Like nobody talks
Hmm.
about the mental state. You need to talk
Mm-mm.
to them about their mental state because their mental state has completely shifted. And, I used to use the terminology that or the saying I like, hey, I was 41 years old when I had my stroke. So I felt like I was 18 in my mind. My body felt like I was 80, and I knew I was 41. And I'm trying to put
Hmm.
all three of them back together. And nobody understood that concept except other stroke survivors.
Hmm.
So I could contribute probably about 90% of the arguments that I had with my ex-wife based off of that misunderstanding. And I'm very curious because you said you went to your therapist that you had before. I
Hmm.
was very intrigued to find out that there was a type of therapist for neuroscience therapy that you can actually go to those type of people because they understand brain trauma. So for your
Hmm.
therapy that you went to before, how was that for you, or was it something that you feel like you didn't necessarily need that, you need something a little bit more?
I had a really, really good relationship with my therapist. Like, it it's probably the strongest relationship you can have with one. I mean, just built on just absolute trust. So I think that for me, she was kind of what I needed to validate a lot of my feelings. She was what I needed to just be a sounding board. Because, like you said, people, they just don't get it, and her job was to get it, and she did that very well. As far as kind of pushing the needle, maybe, or getting me from step A to step B, she may not have had like the expertise in that area. But like I said, like I felt like I had somebody who at least understood me and understood where I was coming from. And if I were to say like I am tired, I'm exhausted, like I just don't have it in the tank, she would support me in that. And I think that that was paramount for me.
I love that. I love that you have a relationship with a person that understands who you were before and who you are after, and still able to actually build you to the person that you want to become. And I really love that for you. And I really thank that particular therapist that you have in your life. That's a pretty cool person.
She's the best.
She's the best. Okay, she's the best. Now, since she's the best, let's switch over to the next segment of our show. Since we know that
Hmm.
she's the best therapist, now we need to know
Yes.
if you are the best person on the hot seat. So let's start with our hot seat questions. And our hot seat questions is going to be like 4 questions that we have. And after those
Okay.
4 questions, I want you to close out the show and to tell people, how they can find you and things of that nature, and we could go from there. But
Okay.
with these 4 questions, when you're done with the question, I want you to say, AVM superhero, I'm ready for my next question. So, are
Okay.
you ready for your first hot seat question?
Yes, I am.
All right, let's go. First hot seat question. Let me see. Let me put my glasses on. Look at my producer. She's looking at me saying, put your glasses on. All right, I got my glasses on. What changed about you mentally after your stroke?
After my stroke, I would say that just, I mentally, I just became stronger. I just felt like so strong and kind of like, not initially. I mean, like through like 2, 3 years after the stroke, I realized that I was so strong and I was so resilient. And um, I like just I became unafraid of anything. There's no fear in me at all. AVM superhero, I am ready for my next question.
Here we go. Okay, I hear you. I hear you, sister. So here's question number 2. Question number 2 states this. What was the hardest part of your stroke recovery?
Hardest part of my stroke recovery. So I am a very impatient person, and that did not serve me well in recovery. Stroke recovery, it is a marathon, not a sprint, and it takes years to kind of get to a space, to even get to the space where I am, where it's like, okay, like I'm feeling good every day, like I'm living this, the new normal. It takes years to get there. And I think that I had issues being patient and I needed to focus more on, what I was doing at that time. Like, focus on the day, focus on my goal for that day, if I had a goal for that day, rather than thinking about like all I wanted to do in the future or all that I should have been doing now. It was just so hard for me to just focus on the day. I was so impatient. I remember coming home from the hospital and just being like, okay, like, when am I going to walk again? When am I going to be able to do this again? I lost my vision. So it's like, okay, when am I going to be able to see again? It took months for my vision to come back completely. And I just remember being so impatient. And that was the hardest part for me. It was just kind of waiting around for my brain to click back on. AVM superhero, I am ready for my next question.
Here's your next question. Here's question number 3. Question number 3 states, what do you wish you did differently in your recovery? I think that's the same kind of question number 2, isn't it? But hey, I
It's
like it.
similar. I think they're going to work in tandem. So again, like I am not a patient person. The thing that I wish that I did differently was rest. Like I wish that I took, more naps. I wish that I lounged around more. I wish that I didn't push my body so hard physically, like right out the gate. Um, if I could go back to the day that, I was released from the rehab hospital, like the one thing I would tell myself is just like, girl, rest, take the nap, go to sleep. Your body is gonna, one, your body needs the rest to recover, but your body's gonna turn on when it wants to turn on. And sleeping and making sure that you are rested is going to aid that 100%. I spent probably the first year and a half of my recovery just absolutely exhausted and fighting through that exhaustion rather than resting. AVM superhero, I'm ready for my next question, my last question.
Here's your final question. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's go. Question number 4. What did the threat of death teach you?
Um, so I mean, I think, generally we probably all have like probably a similar same type of answer, and that is that, you learn to appreciate the little things. You learn to appreciate, spending time with your friends or spending time with your family. You learn to appreciate a good meal. You learn to appreciate like especially a good meal when you haven't been able to swallow for months. So you learn not to take that for granted. You learn to, appreciate watching a good movie. It's those little moments in life that you take joy in again. And I think for me personally, and this is specific to me, but I just learned to really appreciate like the physicality of my body. Having the ability to move, to run, to jump, to play, it's something that is so easy to take for granted, especially if you're able-bodied. And just having all of that ripped away from you at once. Like I just remember, I'm like, oh, I just want to get back in the gym. Like I just want to get back on the treadmill again. Like I just want to be able to move my body again. And really appreciative for the fact that, I am almost fully, able-bodied again. And, I can move my body and it moves when I want it to move and I can walk how I want to walk. Relearning to walk is a very humbling experience.
Asia, I thank you so much for coming on the show tonight.
Thank you.
It's so refreshing to speaking with you and listening to your story. And I thank you for being transparent and
Absolutely.
vulnerable with us. I really appreciate you, my sister.
Absolutely.
Guys, thank you guys for coming out. And next week we will have another great episode. Steve Plantapower will be our guest. But I'm going to bid you farewell and allow my friend Aishaah Reed to close out the show and give us any information that she wants to give us. So, guys, I'll talk to you guys later. AVM Superhero out.
Thank you. Oh, wow, it's just me. Okay. Thank you guys so much for listening to my story. I really appreciate it. Um, I am on social media. You guys can find me on Instagram. My handle is Prosecco Princess CLT Charlotte 704. So please feel free to follow me, reach out. I'm happy to, discuss anything any further, always around to support survivors. Thank you so much for listening to me and taking the time out today.